What'd you play?
I played Star Wars Jedi Survivor. So 4 months ago, I think, or so, I replayed and reviewed this game's predecessor, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. It's a fantastic game. Brief recap. It's really good. It blends different eras of Star Wars together. It's presentationally strong. It pushes a whole bunch of games into a blender, and everything turns out pretty well. It was very important for the world to have that game.
I believe your biggest complaint about the game was the attacks are animation based.
Yeah, it's my biggest, I wouldn't even call it a peeve. It is a criticism, but it was just kind of clunky. Whereas a lot of
you can't cancel animations.
Yeah, so a lot of things would be more drawn out than they needed to be, included in all areas of the game, not just combat, but also platforming and whatever.
See, I pay attention.
You do. So Jedi Survivor came out this year, in the year of our Lord 2023. It takes place 5 years after the events of the first game, and it continues the adventures of young Jedi Knight Cal Kestis, who was knighted in the field. He gets the band back together, and some shit happens. It's wicked good. It's wicked good.
End of review.
Yeah, pretty much. So it has a more original story. The first game was, while very good, it was fairly safe in its material and storylines. It was a lot of very familiar elements, kind of just smushed together to make it recognizable and safe, which is totally fine. This one ends up using a lot of material from the High Republic era, which has been going on in the expanded universe novels and comics and such for the past 3 years, I think. I've been loosely keeping up with it, not as much as I want to, but a lot of it has been very, very good, and it's nice to have an era just pretty completely disconnected from anything else that we have in Star Wars. During an adventure, Cal has a new crew. The crew of the Mantis from the first game have broken up for undisclosed reasons, and he's got this new crew. You go on a mission with them to Coruscant. It opens up with a bang. Everybody dies except for one person and Cal. It's pretty rough. So he is even more survivor guilty than he was last time around. Everyone around him dies. He's all sad about it. So he tries to get the gang back together because he needs their help, because basically he hits the big red button that says you probably shouldn't touch this, and he releases I just realized now that I'm going to be spoiling things for you as you just started the game, but you'll be fine. Huh? Exactly. He awakens a long sleepy Jedi from the High Republic era who's been in stasis for 200 years, who goes a little Joker moment, a little crazy, and becomes the bad guy. There's a lot of other plot twists that are way more spoilery that I'm not going to spoil, but that's the gist of it within the first third of the game. There is a planet or system of planets called Tanalorr, which can be reached through an asteroid field wormhole thing. Basically, it seems to be a safe haven from the Empire, so Cal wants to use it for keeping people safe from the Empire who have been dealing with their shenanigans. Turns out that Seer, in the time between the first game and this game, has been working with the Hidden Path, which we saw in the Obi-Wan Kenobi show as a pipeline of getting Force-sensitive people away from the Empire and whatnot. So they end up wanting to ship all these people off to this super secret place because the Empire couldn't find it. The reason why the bad guy wants to go to Tanalorr is because he's already been to Tanalorr, and he wanted to use it as a new home for the Jedi, use it as a training base and such. And then because of a bunch of plot related reasons, the Jedi said, nah, fuck that shit. But he had made it his life's purpose and stuff, so he's all, no, it's mine. He's a wicked cool character. that's about as much of the plot as I feel comfortable going through. Cal goes on various shenanigans while trying to get to Tanalorr to keep people safe and stuff. There's a metric crap ton of new information, I guess, in this game because it's only pulling from the High Republic era by association, I guess. Like, a couple of characters are name dropped that you would know if you had read some of the books, but it's not really plot related to the High Republic era. It's just, holy shit, 500 years ago there was a Jedi, he got put in the sleepy tube and now he's mad. And how that kind of intersects with the Empire.
I wish I could be put in the sleepy tube.
Seriously. So I think the story is really, really good. It is a bit drawn out in terms of the pacing. The game is, I think, about 5 hours longer than the first one. The characters are all very interesting and well performed and well written, particularly a character that I won't tell you which one it is, but there's a very, very good character who's very relevant. It's not who you think it is, but you'll know who it is when you're done with the game. Who's really, really, really fantastic. Because it's naturally less familiar ground, it doesn't feel quite as... it doesn't feel as Star Warsy, but playing Fallen Order felt like going home. It had that really, like, finally Star Wars, which was really needed at the time. And I absolutely love a lot of the stuff in this game, the vast majority of it, and I do like the High Republic era, but it is going to be unfamiliar to people who aren't familiar with it. Like, it's going to be moderately alienating because it's a very different era of the galaxy with a different aesthetic, different politics, different species. Like, a lot of stuff is really different. But it does mean that the game kind of isolates itself from other TV shows, books, whatever, and it's just kind of there on its own, which I do really commend it for, just being its own original story that has very little to do with much else. So that's really cool. There are a lot of twists and turns and major decisions that happen in this game, which most of them land really well for me. Like, really, really well. There were multiple times I would throw my fist in the air and start screaming. It was lots of really good moments. And then some of them came completely out of nowhere. The chemistry between the old crew and Cal is still wicked strong. The performances are arguably even better than they were in the first game now that they have some more experience. They've been through so much as a group and individually that it lets you listen to the implication of a lot of the dialogue and just kind of imagine all the other stuff that they've been through. They're just in very different places than they used to be. So I appreciate that. It really doesn't spoon feed you pretty much anything that you don't need desperately to understand the story. Cal and Marin are like one of the best Star Wars couples now, so massive W. Grease is still literally like the trash man. He's Colin. He just looks like he needs a noogie.
He looks like Oscar. He lives in a trash can.
Seriously. All the characters are really good, including the new characters. Very, very well-rounded, well-acted, well-performed, and well integrated into the story. There are a couple of legacy characters from the main saga that do make an appearance, but it is drastically less than Fallen Order, whereas Fallen Order felt more like Cal was weaving his way through events that we could have seen in a movie, whether it be like coming across Saw Gerrera or going to Kashyyyk or all that sort of stuff. This feels a lot more like... I'd almost call it Force Unleashed-esque in the way that it feels really special when a legacy character shows up. There's only a couple of them, and a handful of, like, hypothetically you might know this character, but like they're Ship Glutto from the Gabagool system. Like, you saw them one time in one frame in a movie. But the couple of big characters that show up are really well earned. They don't feel like the plot necessarily rests on them, so they actually feel like a nice treat where you're like, oh shit, I know that guy, and oh, all this is going on, instead of it being like, wow, it's a game with Darth Vader in it or whatever, you know? So I like that. The aesthetic style of the game, I think, is preferable, honestly, to Fallen Order. Fallen Order was really, really good at meshing the prequel and original trilogy eras, including planets from both eras, as well as watching the Empire take over planets we had already seen before. So it was really good at having like culture shock from planet to planet, which was really cool. Jedi Survivor has a lot of original planets and really interesting technology, like I said, because a lot of it relates to the High Republic. So this was wicked old technology, and it's just really cool. It's a lot of tan and gold and bronze and stuff. So the vibes are strong with this one. General presentation is very good. I think it's a little better than Fallen Order in that category. There is a cutscene flashback of the events of the first game as you open up this one. I think it's basically Cal falling through a holocron is like how it's presented. It's just the big beats from the last game. It gets you caught up to speed or refreshed really well. I liked that. The menu is a lot more interactive than it was in the first game as well. The music is still fucking excellent. It uses an equal measure of old, previously known themes and a lot of new stuff. Comes in clutch, really hard during emotional moments. It's used extremely well. Gameplay is a massive upgrade from the first one on pretty much all fronts. The combat has been had its speed increased, and a lot of the animations either shortened or have, as you kind of alluded to earlier, the ability to cancel animations, something that's fairly common in melee combat games such as Dark Souls, where it gives you more options to do things. Whereas in the first game, they really wanted to show off how pretty the animations were, but it could make the combat a little busted because you weren't able to stop what you were doing and like deflect an attack or whatever. It's very frustrating after a while. This game, it's a lot faster, it's a lot smoother, there's a lot more options. There are stances, which is the ability to switch between single blade, double blade, dual wielding, lightsaber and blaster, and a crossguard saber, which functions as a longsword, and it's orgasmic. The wide variety of gameplay they added on to the original combat loop with a decent amount of depth to it is really impressive. The skill trees are all also a big upgrade from the original one. They just have more skills, more variety of skills, and they all function a lot better. There are still a few skills that seem a little misplaced, I guess. Like it's you use a skill point to get more health, but there are also health upgrades in the world. It just seems a little contradictory to have both of them. Just for the sake of streamlining it, seems a little dumb, but the combat loop is a lot more enjoyable moment to moment. It works a lot better in boss encounters as well. I think the boss battles are not quite as good as the ones in the first game. Those ones were all pretty good, but there was Terran Malicos was my favorite one from the previous game, and the Trilla fight at the end of the game for the Ninth Sister was really bugged out. It was very cheap. In this game, I think it's more even-keeled, but it also means that the highlights aren't quite as good. You end up fighting the main antagonist of the game, Dig Ingara, the evil bad Jedi man, multiple times, which can feel a bit repetitive. He does have a really cool moveset because he only has one fucking arm, so he fights really cool, just very interestingly. He at some points makes a force projection of an arm to use it to hold a lightsaber and stuff. It's wicked cool. He can just fight with the lightsaber with the force, but he's holding it. Just really cool stuff. There is a fight with his basically lieutenant, which is very cool and it looks good, but it's wicked cheap. It does bug me. It took me 3 hours for one boss, and every time I was like, that seems a little it's not just me being bad at it. It was really hard to pin down a specific criticism of it. Just I'd say the combination of reaction time and accuracy was just off. It was really hard to get through that. But everything smoothed out after that as well. Just the boss battles are a little less tension grabbing. But also, there is a boss battle with a legacy legendary Star Wars character in the game, which is really good. It's not amazing, but it is very fun, and it's very relevant to the story, which is cool. Platforming has had a pretty decent increase as well. It's not early Assassin's Creed levels of cool, but it's definitely a lot better. It's a lot faster. It smooths over the animations a lot more than the first game did. It's a lot harder to get stuck on things. The geometry is just laid out a lot better. Also, there's the addition of a grappling hook, which makes things a lot more fun, but also it doesn't cheap out like the gameplay loop to just, I don't know. For example, in Halo Infinite, I really like the grapple shot. It's fucking awesome, but it also does mean that you're less inclined to use vehicles because the grapple shot is wicked fast. So it can make you kind of just zip around the single player campaign really quickly without appreciating it. Jedi Survivor doesn't do that because you can only use it in certain circumstances. So it's less that it necessarily gives you more options in like a open world sandbox way, and more like it's a new tool that opens up more paths like a Metroidvania, which is cool. It also just adds some pizzazz sometimes. Like if you're, say, grappling onto the edge of a ledge, you can hold the jump button, so when you go up at the end of it, you do like a flip and land on your feet instead of like grabbing onto the ledge. Little stuff like that adds a lot. The variety of force powers as well for combat and I guess stealth hypothetically have been increased. They're still a little weak, but because in this game you end up using the dark side a little bit, there is a wider variety of powers and ways that they are demonstrated, which is really nice. It does add to the variety. The first game could feel a little limited because you are limited to light side force Jedi powers. On that note, the game also doesn't hit Cal with the amnesia brick like most sequels do, where they're like, Lamau, forget everything you learned in the first game. There is still a learning curve. The first level is mostly a tutorial, but you just have the skills that you acquired in the previous game, or at least the vast majority of them, right from the get-go, and then it adds on top of them instead of just making you go through the motions again to feel as powerful as you did in the last game. This game actually makes you feel more competent and more powerful than you were before, which is really important for sequels that take place years later. A few of the large developments in the plot work very well on an emotional level as well. I did get very frustrated with certain choices that characters made. I did get emotionally engaged. There's a lot of, damn, that makes sense, but also fucking die, you dumbass.
So maybe you shouldn't play video games while you're on your period.
Shut up. I'll do whatever I want on my period. I just like that. It's nice. It's nice being able to play something and watch a lot of cutscenes and not feel like characters are making decisions just because the plot requires them. There's a lot of choices that are made which are handled in a way that feels understandable when they're explained from that character's perspective, but they are frustrating in the moment. Back to gameplay real quick because I forgot. There's also like a buddy squad system at play in certain parts of the game. It's pretty simple. It works okay, but it isn't much to hold on to. During certain campaign missions, you will be paired up with a squad mate to help you with platforming and combat. It's okay. The AI actually works, is the bigger part that makes it cool. The AI works. The character does what you tell it to do. It functions. It can actually kill enemies. It's more just not utilized enough for my liking. If you're going to introduce an element like that, I think you should use it a lot, or give you the opportunity to do it outside of main missions where you can just get off the Mantis, pick a squad mate, and then go fuck off. I think that would be neat. They don't do that, which is a little disappointing. So it feels a bit shallow, but it does add a little bit more spice to the gameplay loop. Technical qualities is a little rough. Fallen Order did launch originally in a bit of a rough state, but it was patched pretty quickly. It just needed an extra month in the tank, basically. Just needed a little bit of extra shine on it. Jedi Survivor launched in an abysmal state. The game was complete in the sense that all of the campaign is there. They're not skimping out on like cosmetic items or whatever that you have to wait to get later. It's more a matter of the fact that the optimization is abysmally shit, especially on PC. Like, the game didn't work on launch for like a month. Now it works pretty well. It does still have some pretty big problems though. The file size, I believe, is around 140 gigs, and for a game that isn't like jaw-droppingly gorgeous, it's not good for it to be that big. It certainly is not an ugly game by any means, but I think they picked and chose between they played eeny, meeny, miny, mo with certain elements from Fallen Order that they wanted to look better or look worse, I think, because it didn't feel like a general quality increase. It felt selective. Whereas, say, I think cloth simulation is a lot better. I think hair simulation is a lot worse. It's just stuff like that. I feel like they really had to pick and choose what they could spend their time and resources on, which is a shame because this game released 4 years later and may have been in development for at least 5 years. So I think that's a little lame. I played it on the Xbox Series X, and I still had a decent amount of problems. There's a lot of pop-in, like a lot of pop-in. There's pop-in during cutscenes, there's pop-in during gameplay. Sometimes you'll load into an area, and it's like a good minute before everything's kind of caught up to you. That's not good. That's pretty bad, actually. There's also a lot of moments during the game where it will stop you and wait to load stuff up, mostly because the game worlds are a lot bigger. It is more of an open world than it was previously. Jacob, you'll find out very soon. But like, say you're exiting the main hub area, which is a diner bar, whatever, that Grease set up on another planet. It's a cool location. It looks good. The characters there are very fun. You can listen to like rumors for more gameplay opportunities about like, oh, there's a giant frog down the street. Go punch it, whatever. Stuff like that, which is cool. But like, it'll stop you at the door before you exit for like 10 seconds while it definitely is loading stuff. And it's pretty rough. It's kind of disappointing because I felt like the first game was really good at not doing that. The game worlds were still fairly large, but it didn't feel like they blew it out so much that it needed to selectively render the game. At least it gave off the impression that Fallen Order would just load the whole planet that you were on to some extent. Whereas now it definitely feels like it's, I wouldn't say chugging, but it's close to chugging sometimes. That's kind of the biggest technical complaint. There's moments where just general buggy glitch stuff happens. You'll fall through the map. You'll not, hits won't register during combat. The weapon system will bug out. You'll get caught on objects like a rock or whatever. That happens somewhat frequently, which is lame. It's certainly not unplayable by any means, but its bad launch and its continued, I wouldn't say troubled, but rough state is definitely going to kill this game's momentum moving forward, especially if it's going to be another 4 or 5 years before the next one. I think more people might end up going back to Fallen Order more than they're going to go back to this, which is lame because I think a lot of the game has a lot more merit than Fallen Order did. It's a lot more ambitious. It looks visually like variety more. It looks better. There's a lot more variety from location to location. There's a lot more characters. There's a lot more just different shit to look at. But I do think it's very stifled by its, I would assume, bad production cycle behind the scenes. Just kind of rushed out the door too fast. Customization is a lot better this time around as well. It's not amazing, and a lot of it doesn't matter, but there are a lot more cosmetic options, whether it goes to Cal's facial hair, clothing items, like specifically BD1's like entire body is customizable. Same thing with lightsaber parts. They don't do anything gameplay-wise, and they're not the most exciting collectible to pick up in the world, but it's more of what the first game did, and I'm fine with that. I did like the customization system of the first game. Customizing your lightsaber is a little silly because it does end up being hidden by your hand very frequently, but whatever, I don't know, it doesn't really matter that much to me. The customization options all look good, and that's the bigger thing this time around, whereas last time a lot of the options definitely felt a little rushed, at a little like, crap, we need to make another poncho. This is a lot more variety, and I think most of them actually look pretty good. There's also an option during New Game Plus that you can basically randomize your appearance, and I think that's awesome. like it turns your lightsaber into a rainbow. Like every 4 seconds it'll like change color. Like it just constantly
That's cool.
spins around the color spectrum, and then every time you die and respawn, it changes your appearance like randomly. So you'll go from mullet and goatee to like skinhead. It's really cool. It's silly, but it is nice. New Game Plus is also disappointing, as it was with the first game. It was released a couple of weeks after launch, which is not cool. And also because a lot of the new abilities you get during the campaign are locked behind story choices, or not story choices, but like story plot points. It's not like you're going to go through like playing a Souls game or whatever on New Game Plus. It is still more like you can use your customization options pretty early on, and you're powered up really quickly, but not everything is unlocked from day one. It's not like you're breaking the map right out the gate, which is disappointing. There also just isn't much to reward you for completing a New Game Plus run through. It's like one achievement, so that's kind of lame. They added fast travel for meditation points, which I heard was a big complaint for people in the first game, so that's nice. It's only on the same planet, which makes sense, because they really want you to go back to the Mantis to travel. So if you are missing one collectible in one spot of the map, you can just use the meditation points to travel. I still think it's way more fun to run around the map, but because the map is pretty big in some areas, it does make sense to add more fast travel. But I didn't do it that much. I didn't feel like I had to. Like Spider-Man for PlayStation. The web swinging is so fast, you barely need to fast travel. Like, you can, but like, are you stupid? Overall, really good game. But it's kind of a travesty that it launched in such a bad technical state that it's gonna be buried by like next year. Just kind of sad. Just really fucking good. But you have to get through certain technical problems and frustrations to appreciate what it has to offer.
Do you feel that this should be in the talks for Game of the Year?
I think it being nominated makes sense. I really don't think it should win, though. I think because it is a sequel that is more of the same, even if the scope is bigger and it's more ambitious, it is a sequel to a game that mostly is more of what the last game was.
But so aren't so many other games on the list for Game of the Year.
Yeah, but like...
You got RE4, you got Tears of the Kingdom.
Okay, I would compare it with Tears of the Kingdom from what I can tell. It's bigger and it's better, but it is also more of the same. Same thing with Spider-Man, from what I can hear. I think RE4 and Dead Space Remake shouldn't be allowed on the list because they're remakes, even if they are both from the ground up. And like last season, which means last month, like Dead Space Remake was like our top game of last year.
Pretty much.
I don't think like official game awards, I don't think it should be considered. I think it makes sense, but I think that's dumb. I think that's snubbing a bunch of other games that have a much better case. Like Baldur's Gate 3. Mm-hmm. I haven't even played it, and it looks like Game of the Year. Mm-hmm. So I'd say nominated. I definitely say out of the list, I wouldn't vote for it. But if we had ranked choice voting, it would be in like my top 5, I think.
Intriguing.